What kind of love dares to defy the gods, and survives only by becoming something else entirely? Not metaphor. Not symbol. Flesh, feather, blood. A man and a woman, consumed by grief so pure, so blinding, it cracked Olympus open, and forced the immortals to blink. They called themselves Zeus and Hera. Mocked them. Laughed in the face of divine power. Mortal mouths shaping divine names like a dare. And the gods heard. Oh, they always hear. Especially when hubris stinks like fresh blood in their sacred halls. The sea swallowed him. Not in silence. It roared, clawed, foamed like a beast torn from the underworld. Ceyx, the king, the fool, the lover, vanished beneath waves that weren't just angry. They were commanded. Directed. Personal. The gods weren't punishing sin. They were answering an insult. But this isn't his tragedy. This is hers. Halcyon felt his death before the news. Before the dream. Before Morpheus twisted through her sleep like a phantom, wearing her husband's face, speaking with his drowned voice. No heartbeat in that vision. No warmth. Just salt and cold and the impossible truth. The man she loved was dead. And that's when the myth turns. That's when it starts to bleed. She walks into the sea like it owes her something. Like she's going to rip him from the jaws of oblivion. Like death is a door and she's holding the key. But the sea doesn't give. The sea doesn't feel. The sea ends things. Except it didn't. Because what happened next wasn't death. It was a transformation no god expected. Two kingfishers. Wings where there were arms. Beaks where there were mouths. Two souls too bound to separate, even by death, even by divine decree. Transformed, not as punishment. Not as mercy. But as warning. Now, every winter, the storm stops. The wind stills. The ocean bows to a memory no one dares name. The Halcyon days. A sacred calm in the dead of chaos. Born from a love that refused to die clean. But here's the question clawing at the locked box of history. What exactly did they become? Not just birds. Not just myths. Something older. Stranger. A story buried in bone and blood and salt. This isn't a love story. It's a defiance story. A metamorphosis forged in divine fury and human desperation. A myth too dangerous to be just a myth. And you're holding it. The gods wanted it forgotten. The sea tried to drown it. But still, it sings. In wind. In wave. In wings that slice across still skies like echoes of a truth no god could silence. So ask yourself one thing. What are you willing to sacrifice, to never lose the one you love? A torch sputters in the dark. Its flame, wild, orange, snarling, casts shadows on crumbling stone. Wind howls through unseen corridors, whispering names too ancient for any living tongue. Somewhere beyond the black, something moves. Something watching. Not with eyes. With memory. The gods are not gone. They are waiting. You stand where mortals once knelt. Bare knees scraped raw on marble steps, hands raised to the sky, trembling, begging, daring. The air here is thick. Not with smoke, but with belief. That raw, desperate kind that doesn't just hope, it demands a response. The kind that feeds on fear. That births myth. Because myth was never meant to entertain. It was built to explain the terror. When the earth split open and swallowed lives whole, what else could they do but whisper Hades is hungry? When thunder cracked the sky in half and lightning clawed at the hills, they named it Zeus's wrath. When waves crashed and ships vanished in the foam, they cried out Poseidon, because the alternative was far worse, chaos. Meaningless death. A world without order. Without gods. So they told stories. No. They offered stories. Like blood on the altar. Like sacrifices. Myths were not bedtime tales. They were pacts. Barters. Pleas to the immortal. And the gods. They listened. Not like the gods people whisper about now, distant, silent, symbolic. No. These gods were alive. Merciless. Feral. They wanted things. Worship. Fear. Obedience. They walked among mortals, cloaked in storms or disguised as lovers. Their touch blessed crops or scorched cities. They weren't metaphors. They were power, breathing and real and endlessly watching. Heroes bled in their names. Kings fell under their feet. Monsters were born from their lust, their fury, their careless boredom. And mortals, pitiful, fragile mortals, kept telling their stories because to speak of the gods was to matter. To be heard. Even if it killed you. There was Orpheus, who sang into the mouth of hell, heart burning with grief, fingers trembling over strings, daring Hades himself for a second chance at love. There was Achilles, golden and doomed, rage boiling in his veins, defying fate one sword stroke at a time. There was Cassandra, cursed to see everything and be believed by no one, screaming warnings to a world already burning. Each story, a scar carved into time. Each myth, a heartbeat echoing in the dark. But don't mistake them for fairy tales. These myths bite. They weren't made to comfort. They were made to make sense of suffering. To give death a reason. To coat horror in gold. To offer the illusion of justice in a world where lightning strikes the innocent. And behind every myth, there's something real. A storm that drowned a fleet. A king who vanished at sea. A queen who went mad from waiting. Something so terrible, so raw, that it had to be wrapped in godhood just to make it bearable. They gave their pain names: Apollo, Artemis, Hera, Ars. They gave their fears faces. And then they worshipped them. But the stories never stayed quiet. They evolved, they spread, they twisted. Like ivy through a ruined temple, myths wove into every breath of life. A farmer whispered to Demeter for a strong harvest. A soldier invoked Ars before the killing began. A mother, eyes hollow from too many sleepless nights, begged Hecate to protect her child from what lurked in the dark. And sometimes, just sometimes, there was an answer. A shadow flickered where none should be. A dream bled into waking life. A voice echoed through the flames, not human, not sane. And that's when they knew, the gods were near. Listening. Deciding. It wasn't about belief. It was about consequence. To speak a god's name was to risk being heard. The myth survived not because they were beautiful, but because they were true in the only way that matters. Not factually. Not historically. But viscerally. Every heartbreak. Every vengeance. Every unbearable silence. Myth gave it form. Myth gave it weight. Myth gave it something to blame. Even now, the ground hums with their stories. You can feel it, can't you? A low, thrumming pulse beneath your feet. The chill crawling up your spine. The sense that you are not alone, that you are never alone. That something vast and ancient and utterly indifferent is brushing against your world, just beyond the veil. It's still there. In the thunder that startles you awake. In the pull of the ocean when you stand too close. In the way you whisper to the sky when everything else has failed. The instinct. The plea. That bone-deep knowing that you are small, and the universe is watching. So light the torch. Step into the dark. Not for answers. For witnessing. The myths never stopped breathing. They're just waiting to be heard again. The sky didn't crack, it screamed. Thunder tore across the heavens like a divine war cry, and for one blinding second, the world held its breath. Birds vanished. Waves froze mid-rise. Trees bent, as if bowing to something that wasn't there but was. You could feel it. Like static in your bones. Like the weight of being watched by something that didn't blink. Then the lightning hit. It struck not just earth, but meaning. A message scrawled in white fire across the skin of the sky: Zeus is awake. And when Zeus is awake, the world changes shape. He is not the god of love. He is not the god of peace. He is the storm behind your eyes when rage takes hold. He is power, pure, crushing, merciless. And he does not forgive insults. Ceyx called himself Zeus. That was enough. Not in jest. Not in arrogance, they said. But the gods don't care about intention. They care about order. About hierarchy. About respect. When a mortal man dares to wear the thunderbolt, even in words, the real one listens. And then he acts. Not with reason. With violence. But Zeus is not alone. The air thickens. Sweet. Rotten. Dangerous. She's here too. Hera. Queen. Fury incarnate. The goddess behind the throne. They call her the protector of marriage, but no title can hold her. She is the storm behind the smile. The venom behind the vow. She hears everything. Especially when her name is spoken by mortal mouths in blasphemous jest. When Ceyx and Alcyone compared themselves to her and her king, she heard it like a dagger sliding across her pride. And Hera never forgets a cut. Together, they moved without warning. Not as husband and wife, but as forces. Wind. Fire. Salt. Grief. They needed no counsel. They sent no heralds. They didn't shout. They whispered. To Poseidon. The ocean is not blue. Not really. It's black. Black like the pit of the god's wrath. Black like a promise of nothing. When Poseidon listens, the sea answers. Not with beauty. With hunger. It doesn't rage because it's wild, it rages because he is. He dragged Ceyx under like a man pulling a rival beneath a table mid-feast. No warning. No mercy. No trace. Just foam, then silence. That's Poseidon's kind of justice. He doesn't speak in thunder. He speaks in weight. In endless pressure. In the kind of crushing that no human body can survive. Ceyx didn't drown. He vanished. But gods do not only punish. They watch. And in the shadows of their rage, others stir. From the deepest corners of sleep, Morpheus unfurls his wings. Not a god. A demon. A dream sculptor. The son of night herself. He doesn't walk. He slips through cracks in thought, sliding into the gaps between grief and waking. And when Hera commands him, he obeys, not out of loyalty, but because she is older than fear. He takes the shape of Ceyx. Not in theory. In truth. Voice. Touch. Eyes wide with death. He doesn't comfort Halcyon. He destroys her. Because that's what the gods wanted. They didn't just want him dead. They wanted her to feel it. And she did. But even gods can be shaken. When Halcyon threw herself into the sea, they watched. Cold. Silent. Expecting bones, maybe. Silence. But what they got was transformation. Feathers. Wings. A cry that wasn't human. Wasn't divine. Was something new. Zeus paused. Hera turned. Poseidon stilled the waves. For a moment, it was as if even Olympus didn't know what it had done. And from that, the Halcyon days were born. Not out of grace. Not out of pity. Out of consequence. A command from the highest to the lowest: for 7 days, every winter, the sea will calm. The storm will sleep. The air will soften. Why? Because of love. No. Because they feared her. They feared what they'd made. What she'd become. The gods shape fate. Not because it's their job, but because it's their nature. They don't ask questions. They don't explain themselves. They act. They punish. They whisper into bones and dream in blood. And when mortals rise, when they push back, when they cling to each other like fire to dry grass, the gods take notice. Because for all their immortality, for all their endless names and powers and shapes, they envy us. They envy love that burns so bright it survives death. They envy pain that creates legends. They envy change. So they strike. And they kill. And they curse. Because they can't become. But mortals. Mortals transform. And nothing terrifies the gods more. She's still standing there. Fingers trembling, gown soaked, hair clinging to her face like sorrow that won't let go. The sea spits at her feet. The sky above her does not weep. It watches. And she waits, for a shadow that will never walk toward her again. His voice. His laugh. His warmth. Gone. Gone. There is no scream. No wail. Her pain is too sharp for sound. This is Greek love. It doesn't end in kisses. It ends in silence. But not the peaceful kind. The kind that follows a knife sliding into the chest. The kind that lingers like smoke after a funeral pyre. The kind the gods feed on. Love, in myth, is not a sanctuary. It is a battlefield dressed in silk. It seduces, then shatters. It binds, then breaks. It sings like a siren and kills like a curse. There are no happy endings here, only scars that echo louder than joy ever could. Ask Orpheus. He went to the land of the dead with music bleeding from his hands. Every step down into Hades threw to him to the woman he couldn't breathe without. And when he turned, too soon, too human, Eurydice vanished again. The gods did not stop him. They let him fall apart. That's the truth of it. Love, in myth, is not safe. It is raw. Writhing. Divine and damned. The gods themselves are tangled in it, jealous, brutal, obsessive. Zeus, the king of the sky, doesn't love. He claims. His desire rips lives apart. He comes as lightning. As swan. As golden rain. He takes. And the mortals he touches are never whole again. Then there's Aphrodite. Beauty so perfect it's a weapon. Her love isn't kind, it's cataclysmic. She makes kings betray nations, gods turn against each other, cities burn for a single face. Paris chose her gift and doomed Troy with it. Because Greek love always costs more than it gives. Even the innocent bleed for it. Psyche, mortal and flawless, cursed by jealousy, kissed by shadows. She never saw Eros's face, only felt his arms in the dark. And when her curiosity flickered, when she lit the lamp to see the god who loved her, he vanished. That's what truth does to love in myth. It burns it alive. There is no safety here. There is obsession. Sacrifice. Madness. Phaedra, consumed with forbidden desire for her stepson, left letters soaked in lies and blood. Medea, betrayed by Jason, fed her children to vengeance. Their love stories didn't just fail, they detonated. Because love in these stories isn't a light in the dark. It is the dark. It demands. It destroys. It devours. But that's why it lingers. Because even as it scorches, it means something. Love is the only force mortals wield that the gods cannot control. And that terrifies them. That's why they strike it down. That's why they curse it. And that's why, sometimes, they lose. Because of her. Because of Halcyon. They killed her husband. Crushed his lungs in salt. Dragged him into the deep, until there was nothing left, but silence and bones. But love, real love, didn't die with him. She walked into the same sea. Not as a victim. As a vow. Not crying. Not broken. Just empty. Whole in her grief. Willing to become nothing rather than live without him. And the gods watched her fall, and flinched. Because for all their power, all their rage and thunder and bloodlust, they had never seen love like that. Love that doesn't beg. Love that doesn't bow. Love that becomes something else. The gods didn't give her wings out of mercy. They gave them out of fear. Because a mortal had loved harder than any of them ever could. And that love bent the laws of death. So she flew. And he flew beside her. Two birds. Not broken. Not punished. Changed. They say she still sings, over the winter waves, during the calm days when even Poseidon holds his breath. Her song isn't pretty. It's holy. Because Greek love doesn't bloom in peace. It screams in storms. And lives. Even when everything else dies. The wolves stopped howling. Not because the moon vanished. Not because the hunt had ended. But because something older than teeth moved through the trees. Thessaly held its breath. Not a leaf stirred. Not a wind dared blow. Even the river slowed, like it feared being heard. This was no ordinary night. This was a night when the land itself remembered. Blood in the soil. Smoke in the stones. Secrets older than gods pulsing in the cracks of rock and bone. And at the edge of that silence, Ceyx. Not a kingdom of glory. Not a city carved by power. A place shaped by weight. The weight of fate. The weight of watching. Ceyx didn't rise, it waited. It waited for kings who cursed the skies. For queens who whispered to the dark. For stories soaked in the scent of salt and the taste of loss. It was never meant for peace. It stood where the earth trembled. Where the cliffs looked down on the sea with contempt, daring the waves to climb higher. Where fog didn't drift, it clung. Wrapped itself around ankles like chains. Like omens. And in that haunted quiet, Ceyx ruled. But the land didn't serve him. Thessaly bowed to no crown. Its mountains were too old. Its gods too cruel. The same rocks that bore Pegasus had seen wars not written in scrolls. Titans had screamed there. Nymphs had wept there. And mortals had tried to live there. Tried. The trees twisted in ways that didn't make sense. Branches that reached away from the sun. Birds that flew too low. Rivers that whispered names no one had spoken aloud in generations. This was not a place of comfort. It was a crucible. Only love dared bloom in it. Halcyon walked its halls barefoot. She didn't fear the cold stone floors. She knew them. She knew every sound they made when the wind rose, every flicker of torchlight that bent wrong, as if something unseen walked beside her. Ceyx didn't spook her. It matched her. Her softness didn't weaken it, it haunted it. like moonlight trapped in a blade. They said the air in Thessaly could make the gods jealous. So thick with old power, it hummed. So heavy with silence, it screamed. From its hills, you could see storms born in real time. You could watch Zeus raise his hand and command the sky. You could smell the sea before you saw it. That churning, frothing graveyard where Ceyx would vanish. Where fate would cut its first wound into Halcyon's soul. But the land warned them. Every dusk, the birds stopped singing just before the sun sank. As if something else rose in its place. As if Thessaly itself held a memory it couldn't purge. Something ancient. Something sharp. This was no place for innocence. And yet love burned there. Not the sweet kind. The kind that curls around ribs like wildfire. That bites back when threatened. That stares down gods with nothing but steady hands and tear-lined eyes. Because love in Thessaly had to fight to exist. The earth didn't nurture. It tested. It tore at your resolve. Stripped you down to bone and vow. It didn't ask if you were ready. It dared you to endure. Halcyon did. Ceyx did. Until the sea came calling. You could hear it sometimes. Not the roar. The law. A low hum beneath the ground, like Poseidon pressing his trident to the seabed, sending vibrations through the spine of the land. Calling. Promising nothing. Demanding everything. Trachis heard it. Always. Its cliffs remembered sailors whose bones lined its shores. Its caves had housed prayers screamed into the dark. Prayers that were never answered. Or worse, were. Even the stars over Thessaly looked different. Closer. Hungrier. Like they were watching more than shining. Like they knew what was coming. Because in Thessaly, myths didn't live in stories. They walked. They breathed through the mouths of men who vanished without cause. They cried through children who sang names they'd never been taught. They waited, in stone, in soil, in silence. And when Ceyx set sail, the mountains turned their backs. Not out of malice. Out of certainty. They knew what the sea would take. They smelled it in the wind. They tasted it in the rain that fell too soon, too hard. The sky warned him. The gulls circled lower than they should have. Even the dogs in the village howled before the ship vanished beyond the edge of sight. But Thessaly doesn't beg. It endures. It watches queens throw themselves into the tide. It watches gods hesitate. It watches love turn into myth, and myth into warning. Because nothing born in Thessaly stays mortal for long. The land sees to that. The smoke curled in strange directions that night, against the wind, against reason. The priestess froze. Her eyes snapped open. Not because she saw something, but because something saw her. Through the rising steam, through the trembling of the laurel leaves, through the bones in her shaking hands, something looked back. The gods had spoken. Not in words. Never in words. The divine didn't explain. They warned. A falcon screams at midnight. A sheep is born with two heads. A statue weeps blood that isn't there the next day. That's how it begins. Not with thunder. With tremors. A hairline crack across the wall of the known. A whisper under the breath of the sky. And then it grows. Faster than thought. Colder than steel. Until men wake choking on dreams that aren't theirs. Until women flinch at the echo of voices they cannot trace. They say oracles are blessed. They lie. Oracles burn from the inside. Their bones ache from holding too much truth. Their mouths blister from words not meant for mortals. They don't speak, they leak. Visions that don't belong to time. Glimpses of futures that twist and fold in on themselves, like snakes eating their own tails. The gods don't knock. They invade. One moment you're kneeling at Delphi with your question hidden beneath your tongue. The next, Apollo is inside your head, shattering your thoughts like glass. Answers come broken. Fire will eat what water hides. Beware the bird who forgets to fly. Do not sail when the moon turns its back. Warnings, wrapped in riddles. You beg for clarity. You plead for direction. But clarity isn't power. Ambiguity is. That's how the divine hold their grip, through shadows. Through symbols that fester under your skin, itching, rotting, begging to be understood. And when the signs come, they don't wait for understanding. They strike. A black dog howling on the temple steps. A fish leaping from boiling water. A storm cloud shaped like a man you buried last year. These aren't coincidences. These are divine interruptions. Omens are the language of inevitability, carved in blood and salt and broken silence. And you're not meant to avoid them. You're meant to kneel. Halcyon saw the signs. She didn't want to believe them. The fire wouldn't light. The wind pushed the door closed 3 times. Her maid dropped a jar, and it didn't shatter, it froze in the air, suspended, then cracked in 2 like it had been struck by something unseen. The birds stopped singing. And yet Ceyx went to see. Because even gods can whisper and still be ignored. The Greeks feared that kind of silence. The kind that means something. They read entrails not for gore, but for geometry. The spiral of the liver, the twist of the gut, it was a map. A code. They listened to thunder not for its volume, but its pattern. 1 boom meant war. 2, famine. 3, death. And when the birds flew backwards at dusk, no one spoke. No one had to. Because the signs weren't there to be interpreted. They were there to haunt. To burrow under your skin and nest inside your dreams. To show you that gods were watching, and not always with mercy. Sometimes an omen was a kindness. More often, it was a test. Would you listen? Would you act? Or would you pretend not to see the writing bleeding through your ceiling at night? The priests said those who ignored signs deserved what came for them. But what if the sign came too late? What if the god enjoyed watching you guess? What if the warning was the curse? There was a woman who buried her son, because an owl landed on his window 2 nights before. She begged him not to leave for the city. He laughed. Said owls were just owls. He was found 2 days later, eyes missing, chest hollowed. The owl returned to the same windowsill. It blinked. Then it flew into the sun. The gods don't warn for your sake. They warn to remind you who owns fate. And fate never forgets. In Trachis, they say the wind speaks in the voices of those who didn't listen. Stand still long enough and you'll hear them. Whispering warnings too late. Weeping apologies that carry no weight. It's the weight that breaks you. The moment you know. When the smoke changes color. When the torch sputters out on a windless night. When the priest turns pale, lips moving but no sound escapes. When the oracle opens her mouth and blood, not words, spills out. That's when the fear hits. Not of death. Of knowing too much. You'd rather be ignorant. You'd rather sail blind than see the storm and steer into it anyway. But mortals don't choose the warning. Only how they suffer it. So the omens keep coming. Goats giving birth in 3s. Salt refusing to dissolve in water. The moon changing shape twice in 1 night. A stranger coughing up sand. And always the dreams. Of birds turning into women. Of wings soaked in grief. of waves shaped like hands, pulling, tearing, dragging. Those dreams don't fade. They fester. Because when the gods send warnings, they don't use language. They use fear. They are fear. And once it touches you, once you've heard the howl of something that shouldn't have lungs, or watched a shadow move against the light, you don't come back untouched. You walk slower. You breathe quieter. And every time the wind changes, you wonder if it's speaking to you. The wind howled through the towering peaks of Thessaly, a mournful cry that echoed through the valleys and whispered secrets of ancient bloodlines. In this land, where the mountains kissed the sky and the rivers carved stories into the earth, two figures emerged from the mists of legend, Ceyx and Alcyone. Their names, etched into the fabric of time, spoke of love that defied the gods and a lineage that bridged the mortal and the divine. Ceyx, a prince whose veins pulsed with the light of the morning star, Eosphorus. Born of celestial radiance and mortal grace, he carried the luminescence of dawn within his soul. His father, the herald of daylight, cast a brilliance upon him that no shadow could dim. Yet, even stars are not beyond the reach of tempestuous fates. Halcyon, daughter of Airless, the formidable god who commanded the winds. Through her father's dominion over the gales and breezes, she inherited a spirit both gentle and unyielding. Her lineage wove her into the very breath of the world, a connection to forces unseen yet deeply felt. Together, Ceyx and Alcyone ruled over Trachis, their union a beacon of harmony and passion. Their love, so profound and unrestrained, led them to playfully address each other as Zeus and Hera, a jest that would stir the ire of the heavens. Such audacity, to mirror the mightiest of deities, did not go unnoticed by the true Zeus, whose wrath was as swift as it was merciless. When Ceyx embarked upon the treacherous seas, seeking counsel from distant oracles, the gods watched with bated breath. Zeus, in his omnipotent fury, unleashed a tempest that shattered the prince's vessel, consigning him to the abyssal depths. Amidst the churning waves and the cacophony of the storm, Ceyx's final thoughts were of Alcyone, his soul reaching for hers even as the darkness closed in. In Trachis, Alcyone was plagued by restless nights, her dreams haunted by shadows and whispers. Morpheus, the god of dreams, took the form of her beloved to deliver the harrowing truth. As the spectre of Ceyx revealed his watery demise, anguish seized Alcyone's heart, a pain so visceral it threatened to rend her very being. Driven by an unbearable grief, she raced to the shoreline, the salty air thick with foreboding. There the sea, ever the bearer of sorrow and secrets, surrendered its tragic offering. Ceyx's lifeless form lay upon the sands, a cruel testament to the gods' vengeance. A wail tore from Alcyone's throat, a sound that resonated with the agony of a love lost to the capricious whims of the divine. In a final act of despair, Halcyon cast herself into the merciless embrace of the ocean, seeking reunion with her departed love. The gods, perhaps moved by the depth of her devotion, or shamed by their own cruelty, intervened. They transformed the star-crossed lovers into halcyon birds, eternal embodiments of their unwavering bond. Thus, during the halcyon days, when the sea lies tranquil and the storms abate, the spirit of Ceyx and Alcyone endures, a poignant reminder of love's power to transcend even the wrath of the gods. The first light of dawn crept over the horizon, casting a golden hue across the tranquil waters of Trachis. The sea lay calm, a deceptive serenity that belied the tempest brewing in the hearts of gods and mortals alike. In this stillness, a figure stood at the water's edge, his gaze fixed upon the vast expanse before him. This was Ceyx, son of Eosphorus, the morning star, his lineage a bridge between the celestial and the terrestrial. The radiance of his father shimmered in his eyes, a light that neither storm nor shadow could extinguish. Born of divine luminescence and mortal grace, Ceyx carried the weight of his heritage with a dignity that commanded both reverence and envy. His father, Eosphorus, heralded the arrival of dawn, a beacon for those navigating the treacherous paths of both land and sea. This celestial connection endowed Ceyx, with a presence that was both commanding and serene, a king whose very being seemed to echo the promise of a new day. As ruler of Ceyx, Ceyx's reign was marked by wisdom and hospitality. His halls welcomed heroes and wanderers alike, offering solace to those weary from their odysseys. Among his esteemed guests was Heracles, the mighty son of Zeus, who found in Ceyx not just a sovereign, but a kindred spirit. Such was the measure of Ceyx's generosity, that his name became synonymous with refuge and kinship. Yet, even amidst the splendor of his court and the love of his queen, Halcyon, a shadow loomed over Ceyx's heart. The tragic fate of his brother, Daedalion, who had been transformed into a hawk by the will of Apollo, weighed heavily upon him. Seeking clarity and perhaps solace, Ceyx resolved to consult the oracle of Delphi, to glean insight into the whims of the gods that so mercilessly toyed with mortal lives. Halcyon, daughter of Aeolus, the god of winds, pleaded with her husband to reconsider. She knew all too well the capricious nature of the seas, the domain over which her father held sway. Her dreams were haunted by visions of raging tempests and shattered vessels, omens she could not ignore. But Ceyx, bound by duty and an unyielding desire for understanding, gently brushed aside her fears. He assured her of his return, his words laced with a confidence that belied the uncertainty of his voyage. The day of departure arrived, and as Ceyx stepped onto the deck of his ship, a foreboding silence enveloped the harbor. The winds held their breath, the waves stilled as if in anticipation of the tragedy to come. Halcyon stood on the shore, her eyes locked onto the receding silhouette of her beloved, her heart a maelstrom of dread and hope. She whispered prayers to the gods, entreaties carried away by the very winds she feared. Days passed, and the sea, once a mirror of tranquility, transformed into a churning abyss. Zeus, perhaps incensed by the audacity of mortals who dared to liken themselves to deities, Ceyx and Alcyone had, in their playful affection, referred to each other as Zeus and Hera, unleashed his fury upon the voyaging king. A tempest of unimaginable ferocity descended upon Ceyx's vessel, the sky rent asunder by flashes of divine wrath. Waves towered like vengeful titans, crashing down with a force that splintered wood and spirit alike. Amidst the chaos, Ceyx fought to keep his vessel afloat, his strength and resolve pitted against the unrelenting onslaught of the storm. But the sea, indifferent to the valor of men, claimed its prize. As the ship succumbed to the depths, Ceyx's final thoughts were not of his own plight, but of Halcyon. With his last breath, he implored the gods to let his body find its way back to her, a silent messenger bearing the weight of his love and the tragedy of his fate. In Ceyx, Halcyon was tormented by restless nights, her dreams invaded by shadows and whispers that spoke of doom. The gods, perhaps moved by pity or guilt, sent Morpheus, the god of dreams, to reveal the harrowing truth. Taking the form of Ceyx, drenched and lifeless, Morpheus appeared before Halcyon, his presence a cruel confirmation of her deepest fears. Grief-stricken and inconsolable, Halcyon rushed to the shore where she had last seen her husband. The sea, now a vast expanse of mocking calm, gently bore the lifeless form of Ceyx to the sands at her feet. A wail of anguish tore from her lips, a sound that resonated with the very fabric of existence, a lament for a love so profound that even death could not sever its bonds. Overcome by despair, Halcyon cast herself into the embrace of the sea, seeking to reunite with her beloved in the only way she knew. But the gods, perhaps seeking to atone for their cruelty, intervened. They transformed Ceyx and Halcyon into halcyon birds, eternal symbols of devotion and the enduring power of love. During the Halcy the wind stopped. Not faded. Not quieted. It stopped. The silence it left behind was wrong, sickeningly wrong. The kind of silence that doesn't belong to the world of the living. Leaves froze mid-tremble. The sea, once rippling with life, held its breath like it knew something had been offended. And in that breathless stillness stood Halcyon, barefoot on the stone threshold of her father's temple, her hands clenched so tightly around the hem of her robe that blood welled beneath her fingernails. She didn't blink. She didn't speak. She didn't pray. Airless had called her. And when the god of winds calls his blood, you come. She moved like the storm hadn't died, like it had climbed into her skin instead. The marble columns loomed like ribs of some great ancient beast, the air thick with salt and old voices. The hall was cold, but not in the way winter was cold. It was cold like absence, like the kind of emptiness that rots the soul. At the altar, something had been left. Feathers. Not placed, not offered. Torn. Still damp, still trembling like they remembered flying. Her breath caught. Not because of the feathers. Not because of the silence. But because of what she felt behind the silence. Him. Her father was near. He didn't speak with words. Airless never needed words. When your soul is stitched into the sky and your heart thunders in every gust, speech is a lesser tool. His presence came like pressure in the chest, like your lungs forgetting how to draw air. She dropped to her knees. The silence shattered. A shriek, shrill, piercing, inhuman, whipped through the temple, slicing across the stone like a blade through flesh. Her hair snapped across her face. Blood from her lip. Eyes stinging. The winds had returned, but not as friends. Not as kin. They were screaming. And it wasn't anger. It was warning. Halcyon rose, spine straight, face expressionless. She knew what they were telling her. She didn't need omens, oracles, or dreams. The air had shifted, and when you are born from the breath of a god, you feel these things in your bones. Something was coming. Something old. Something cruel. She looked to the sea. The waves were biting at each other now, quick and bitter. The winds had tasted blood. They knew. She closed her eyes and whispered his name, Ceyx. The winds wailed. Alcyone was not mortal in the way mortals liked to think. Yes, she wept. Yes, she loved. Yes, her skin could bleed. But the winds did not teach softness. They taught torment. She was the daughter of the storm. Born in a scream. Raised in a howl. She learned early that love was not gentle, it was violent, all-consuming. It could tear your ribs apart, and wear your name into the sky like lightning across a grave. And she had loved him anyway. Even now, her bones remembered his warmth. Her body, still aching from nights tangled in his arms, refused to accept the cold. Every gust across her skin became a memory. Every whisper in the air became his voice. But no wind carried his breath now. That was the horror. The wind carried everyone. It could snatch a name from a whisper on the other side of the earth and press it against your ear. It could bring the scent of fear from a battlefield 10,000 miles away. It could drag the last breath of a dying sailor up from the sea and deliver it to his mother's door. But it carried nothing of Ceyx. Only silence. Only feathers. Only the kind of ache that made you bite through your own tongue, just to make sure you still existed. She staggered back into the temple, and the doors slammed shut behind her, unbidden. Her hair floated, suspended. Not by wind. By power. Ancient, ancestral, furious. Airless appeared, not as a man, but as force. Columns cracked. Light warped. The very air trembled like it wanted to flee from its master. His voice, when it came, was not sound but impact. You knew what he was. She shook her head. He is mine. And still, the wind god snarled, he went to sea. The silence that followed tasted like betrayal. She stepped forward, fearless. Then give him back. Airless's laugh was the breaking of mountain peaks. You ask the winds to unmake what the gods have already devoured. Her throat closed. The air around her thinned. She couldn't breathe. He was showing her the truth, not in words, not in visions, but in pain. The sea had him. The gods had watched. And the winds had done nothing. She fell, fingers clawing at the floor, dragging air into her lungs like she could pull his soul with it. Then curse them, she whispered, voice shredded, curse them all. The storm that erupted did not touch the mortal world. It belonged to the divine. It rattled the bones of titans long dead. It screamed through Tartarus and tore at the veils between life and death. It left scars on the sky no star could hide. And in its center stood Halcyon. Her robes whipped around her like wings of wrath. Her eyes bled light. She no longer walked, she soared. Not in body. Not in form. But in fury. She was a daughter of Airless. Not some grieving widow. Not some tragic myth to be softened in verse. She was wind. And the wind remembers. It remembers every lie the gods ever told. Every prayer they ignored. Every life they shattered because it amused them. It remembers names. It remembers screams. It remembers the silence that comes after a body sinks into the sea. And now, so did she. The gods turned their heads when she spoke the vow. Not because they feared her, but because they knew what came next. The sky was bruised with dusk, and a salt wind howled low through the cliffs, too rough to be holy, too still to be natural. The altar was bare, save for two things: his blood, still fresh on her fingertips, and her crown of woven feathers, torn from her own hair. No priest, no music. Just the crash of waves against the rocks, relentless and watching. Hungry. They stood facing one another, eyes locked like blades crossing in silence. Halcyon, with the fury of storms coiled behind her spine, and Ceyx, flesh and breath and mortal softness, but gods had watched him too long to call him mere man. His hands trembled. Not from fear. From awe. Because she was not a bride. She was wind wrapped in skin. And he had touched her name without permission. Still, she let him stand. Still, she said yes. Their hands met, not in a tender clasp, but in a bruising grip, knuckles white, palms cut. Their blood mixed before the vows were spoken. That was the first oath. Not words. Wounds. The second was the silence between heartbeats, when neither one breathed, waiting for the other to speak. The third was not spoken aloud. But the winds heard it. If the gods take you from me, I will tear the sky open to get you back. The sea frothed below, an audience of ghosts and old things that remembered what true unions cost. Marriage was never gentle. Not in myth. Not in war. Not when it mattered. It was binding by fire, by sacrifice. Something had to die to make room for forever. And tonight, it would be their old selves. Ceyx leaned forward, eyes full of something too soft for this world, and whispered a promise against her ear. She flinched, not because it hurt, but because it didn't. Because he still believed they could have peace. Still believed the gods might allow love to stand unbroken. But Halcyon had lived inside silence. She had heard what the wind never said. She knew better. And still, she loved him. It was the kind of love that haunts the ocean, the kind that makes widows claw at waves that never give back. It was the kind of love gods hate. Because it reminds them of what they cannot feel. Because it cannot be controlled. Because it endures. Their lips met, not soft, not sweet. It was an offering. A defiance. A scream pressed into a kiss. The wind shrieked overhead, scattering the feathers she'd torn from her crown. They swirled around them like wings, or warnings. The sea pulled back, waves retreating as though even the ocean did not dare interrupt what was binding now. The ground beneath them did not shake. The sky did not crack. But something changed. You could feel it, if you listened. If you were quiet enough. The gods took note. Because this was not a marriage born of favor, or wealth, or status. Not a union arranged or forced. It was chosen, two souls who found each other in the screaming dark, and did not let go. That was dangerous. That was heresy. That was holy. The myths don't talk about what happened after the vows. They skip the trembling hands that held each other in the dark when sleep wouldn't come. They don't mention the rawness in her voice, when she said his name like it was the only word she still trusted. They forget the way she needed him, not as savior, not as shield, but as reminder. Reminder that even gods couldn't erase her. But the signs were there. Small things, at first. The fire that wouldn't light no matter how dry the kindling. The bird that struck the window and bled on the sill, gasping with a voice too human. The wind that stopped when she spoke his name. Ominous. But not enough. Then came the dreams. He didn't tell her at first. Not all of them. Just shadows in the corners, whispers in his sleep, salt in his hair when he woke. But she knew. Of course she knew. The winds whispered through her veins. She could feel the way the world was shifting around them. Like their love had changed something sacred, tilted the balance. And love, real love, never goes unpunished. When he told her he must leave, her silence said more than rage ever could. Not because she doubted his return. Not because she feared the sea. But because she knew what the sea took from those it envied. She begged the winds to carry him safely. They didn't answer. Not then. Because love, in myth, is not allowed to rest. It must burn. It must suffer. It must be tested. And marriage, real marriage, the sacred, brutal kind, is not rings and blessings and garlands. Its hands stained with blood. Its voice is hoarse from screaming. It's choosing each other again and again, when everything else has fallen to ash. When he sailed, he did not look back. Not because he didn't want to. Because if he did, he wouldn't go. And if he didn't go, the gods would tear her apart. The sea swallowed the horizon. She stood alone. But the winds remembered their vow. And they watched. A silence like that shouldn't exist. Not in a world still spinning, not in a house where love once breathed. But it was there, cold and absolute. Her hands lay flat on the altar, knuckles bone white, nails sunk into the stone like claws. No incense burned. No prayers whispered. The wind outside held its breath, and even the sea dared not stir. Halcyon's voice broke that stillness like glass. We are not lesser. And the gods heard it. Not because she shouted. Not because her defiance pierced Olympus like a thrown blade. But because she said it to his face. Zeus? The one who rules storms and lusts and oaths. The one whose fury births thunder, and whose jealousy sets cities ablaze. She said it while standing next to Ceyx, his hand in hers, their bond unshaken. Their love undefeated. And worse than blasphemy, worse than rebellion, she believed it. They did not mock Zeus and Hera. That would have been easy. Cowards mock what they don't understand. No. They claimed kinship. Halcyon and Ceyx, two mortals who dared speak the gods' names in comparison, not in worship. Two souls bound not by fear or control, but by choice. By devotion that never needed thrones or lightning. They said they were equal to the king and queen of Olympus. But equal in what? Not in wrath. Not in cruelty. Not in the stony rituals of divine dominion. No, they matched them in the one thing that should never have belonged to gods, love. Not a polite, polished love. Not the kind sung about in temples, or carved into wedding goblets. But the kind that scars. The kind that sears. The kind that says, I will burn the heavens to keep you breathing. Ceyx laughed, once, when he said it. They need temples. I only need you. And for a moment, the world was still. Not quiet. Not dead. But listening. Because hubris doesn't begin with arrogance. It begins with hope. With the audacity to believe you can shape your own fate. To look at gods who toy with mortals like ants beneath glass and say, you are not better than me. And love is the loudest blasphemy of all. That's what they couldn't stand. Not the comparison. Not the pride. But the harmony. Zeus and Hera were myth wrapped in war. A marriage of grudges and betrayal. Jealousy soaked their thrones, and their union was a battlefield painted in gold and blood. Ceyx and Alcyone were quiet. Fierce. Steady. They whispered love where the gods roared war. And the sky cracked. Not with thunder. Not yet. But something in the air shifted. Priests stopped speaking their names in prayer. Birds avoided their home. The wind that once curled like a pet around Alcyone's ankles now watched her with eyes it did not have. She felt it first. In the cold that touched her skin even when the sun burned. In the way her shadow stretched wrong across the floor. In the way Ceyx held her like he already knew they were being watched. He tried to shield her with silence. He kissed her like it might protect her. He smiled, even when he was breaking inside. But the gods do not need storms to punish. They just need time. And the moment came. When he spoke the wrong word to the wrong sailor. When he said, laughing, Halcyon and I. We love like Zeus and Hera, without the poison. He meant it as praise. A marvel. A vow that even gods should envy them. But the gods do not envy. They destroy what they cannot command. The sea was calm that morning. Calm like death is calm, too quiet, too still. He kissed her hand, his touch lingering, as if some part of him knew. Halcyon clutched his sleeve before he could turn. Don't make the sea your rival, she whispered. But he was already gone. And the silence returned. Not the silence of absence. But the silence before punishment. Because hubris isn't always about towers and wings and falling from heights. Sometimes, it's just two people who love too clearly. Too honestly. And the gods cannot abide love that doesn't fear them. So they answered. Not with thunder. Not with curses. But with absence. No word. No wreckage. No body. Just time. And Halcyon, still at the window, still listening for a voice that no longer spoke. The days passed like knives. The nights like drowning. And still, she loved him. Even when the sea mocked her. Even when the wind refused to carry his scent. Even when she knew. Because love this fierce doesn't die with breath. It rots. It rages. It becomes something the gods cannot kill without consequence. And now she waits. Not as a widow. Not as a mourner. But as proof. That love, even punished, even scorched by divine wrath, still rises. Still screams. Still waits. The gulls weren't singing. They circled once, twice and then vanished, their wings cutting the sky like blades. The harbor smelled wrong. Salt still hung in the air, but beneath it, something sour, like copper, like blood. Ceyx stepped onto the deck with a heart full of love and a shadow clinging to his heel. He smiled, but it cracked. Like a mirror that had been stared at too long. He wasn't supposed to leave. Not now. Not when the sky felt heavy with things unspoken. But he told himself it was duty. Told Halcyon it would be quick. Told the sailors the sea would favor him. He lied to all of them. Even himself. She stood on the shore, eyes like storm glass, unblinking. She didn't cry. Not then. Not where he could see. That would have broken him. And he needed to look unbreakable. Needed the illusion. But his hand lingered on hers a second too long. His fingers trembled when he pulled away. He should have stayed. The oracle's words still echoed behind his ribs, low and itching. If you leave, you won't return as you left. He had laughed when he heard it. Laughed to bury the fear. Laughed to shut it up. But oracles don't joke. And the gods don't forget. Not when you claim their thrones with mortal mouths. The ropes groaned. The sail shivered. And the wind kissed the back of his neck like a warning. No gulls. No waves. Just silence. The kind that waits. He told himself the voyage was simple. There were messages to deliver, trade to secure, offerings to renew. But there was more. Always more. He was running. Not from Halcyon. From the feeling that he'd stepped too far, spoken too loudly, loved too hard. From the whisper behind his thoughts that something was coming. It followed him onto the boat. Slithered in through the cracks in the wood. Watched from behind the clouds. And when the shore vanished, it breathed. The sea didn't rage. Not yet. It waited. Because this wasn't about wind and water. This was about punishment. And punishment takes its time. The sky stayed clear longer than it should have. Days passed with too easy sailing. Too smooth waters. Like the world was pretending. Like fate was luring him forward, one calm mile at a time. Each sunset looked wrong. Too red. Too still. The men whispered when they thought he couldn't hear. Something's watching. Something's wrong. But Ceyx smiled. Because if he didn't, he'd scream. He thought of Halcyon every night. Her hands. Her breath on his shoulder. The way she said his name like it meant more than sound. He would close his eyes and remember the curve of her lips, the weight of her love. And then he would wake. Each morning colder than the last. Each wave darker. Birds no longer followed the mast. The stars began to flicker, uncertain. The crew grew quiet. No songs. No laughter. And still the sea stayed still. It was the kind of stillness that breaks bones. It hit on the seventh night. No warning. No shift. 1 second, calm. The next, chaos. The sky ripped. Not thunder. Something worse. Like the air itself was screaming. The mast snapped with a sound like a neck breaking. Sails tore like flesh. The waves rose too fast. Too high. They weren't waves anymore. They were teeth. The sea didn't want his ship. It wanted him. Ceyx fought. Hands blistered, breath ragged, salt carving his eyes raw. He shouted her name. Over and over. Not like a prayer. Like a promise. The gods heard him. They just didn't care. The storm clawed at him, dragged him under, spat him back up like he was nothing. He clung to wood. To memory. To hope that maybe, he would still see her again. But the sea is cruel. And gods are crueler. They don't send monsters. They let you believe. Right until the moment they crush you. The rain burned. Lightning struck so close it blinded him. And still, he held on. Because there was something inside him that refused to let go. Not pride. Not fear. Love. He had to live. Not for himself. For her. The sea laughed. A wave taller than any wall swallowed him whole. And everything went black. The sea held its breath. Not calm, waiting. Then it began. Not with thunder. Not with waves. With a sound. A low hum, rising from the bones of the world, as if the ocean was remembering something ancient, something angry. The air turned sharp. The kind that makes your lungs sting and your teeth ache. The kind that means he is coming. Poseidon. Not a god in a marble hall. Not a statue bathed in sunlight. But fury, shaped into muscle and salt. The quake beneath your feet. The scream in the water. He doesn't shout. He doesn't plead. He claims. And tonight, he was hungry. Ceyx's ship was already broken. Splintered wood and shredded cloth tossed like toys in a tantrum. But that wasn't enough. Poseidon doesn't destroy because he must. He destroys because he can. The sea rose with hands made of waves, reaching for breath, for blood. No mercy. No hesitation. This was divine justice. This was punishment. Not for what Ceyx had done, but for who he dared to be. A man who loved too hard. A mortal who forgot the sky belonged to gods, not hearts. Poseidon doesn't forget those things. He waits. He listens for names spoken too loudly, dreams held too tightly. And then he strikes. One bolt of lightning split the sky. A tear in heaven's veil. Light poured down, white and merciless. And Ceyx was nothing beneath it. Salt carved into his skin. Wind howled in voices not his own. The sea spoke in roars. He tried to scream. But his mouth filled with water. The kind that burns. The kind that pulls. The kind that judges. Poseidon does not speak, but his rage is everywhere. In the way the waves curl like claws. In the way the ocean floor seems to rise, reaching up like it wants to swallow. He had heard the prayers. He had felt the ships kiss the waves like they owned them. He had watched the humans dance and defy and beg. They worshipped him when they feared him. They forgot him when the skies were clear. But now they remembered. Because he was the god who didn't need Olympus. He was the god who could drag Olympus down. Ceyx tried to fight. Hands torn. Chest crushed against planks and ropes and wreckage. Still, he tried. Because there was love inside him. And Poseidon hates that kind of love. The kind that says, I'll come back to you. The kind that defies fate. The kind that pretends it can bargain with gods. So Poseidon ripped the sea open. And the sea swallowed him whole. The water was endless. Not blue. Not green. Not soft. It was teeth. It churned and twisted. Wrapped around his legs, his throat, his ribs. Every breath was pain. Every second was war. And still, he thought of her. Halcyon. He didn't see the palace of Poseidon. Didn't see the golden chariots, or tridents, or silver fish. He saw judgment. An ocean that held no forgiveness. A god who punished silence and defiance the same way. The sky tore open again. A jagged wound of light. The sea lifted him, just for a moment, like it wanted him to look. To see what he'd left behind. To feel it. Then it dropped him. No grace. No goodbye. The weight of the water crushed him. Poseidon watched. Not with eyes. With presence. His wrath wasn't loud. It was inevitable. Every time a ship forgets to bow, he remembers. Every time a prayer is late, he listens. Every time a mortal believes love can outswim death, he waits. And when it's time, he doesn't knock. He breaks. Ceyx was a ripple. A warning. Not to gods. To us. The sea doesn't need armies. It is one. And Poseidon is the storm behind every silent tide. The sea went still. Too still. The kind of silence that crushes the chest. Not peace, the pause before heartbreak. A single plank bobbed in the water. Nothing else moved. No birds. No cries. No light. And then he rose. Not like a man. Like memory. Face pale. Hair matted. Fingers curled as if still holding on to something, someone. Eyes closed, because the world was no longer his to see. Ceyx was dead. But the sea would not let him go. It lifted him with care now, cruel and gentle all at once. As if mocking the love he carried to his last breath. As if saying, you thought you could win. You thought the gods would spare you because your heart was full. Fools don't get mercy. His body floated, but there was weight everywhere. In the sky. In the salt. In the silence. A king without a crown. A husband without a home. A promise broken by thunder and tide. He had whispered her name when the waves filled his mouth. Halcyon. Not for help. Just to hold it one last time, before the dark took him. Even in death, he looked like he was still reaching for her. Not screaming. Not afraid. Just aching. The sea, God and grave, kept him above water for one final cruelty. Let the world see what it does. Let love rot in plain view. Let her find him. The myths say the sea is beautiful. They lie. The sea is a mirror that shows you what you fear. It doesn't speak. It shows. It showed her. Halcyon. Standing on the cliffs, eyes searching, soul already breaking. She didn't know why. Not yet. But grief arrives before the body. She saw the shadow first. A shape that didn't move right. Too still. Too soft. Like the world had forgotten how to breathe around it. She stepped forward. Once. Twice. She knew. Before the face surfaced. Before the wind carried the scent of salt and death. Before the gods whispered apologies too late to matter. She knew. Because when you love someone that hard, their end echoes inside you. The myth tells us he floated to shore. But he didn't float. He was carried. By the sea that broke him. By the god who watched him drown. By the fate that mocked love with storm and silence. The wind hushed. Even Poseidon, brutal, unrepentant Poseidon, let the tide go quiet as she walked to him. Halcyon fell to her knees. Not from weakness. From weight. The weight of a love now cold. The weight of a goodbye that never had words. The weight of a story that ended with water in the lungs and promises unkept. Her fingers touched his face. And the ocean shuddered. Not rage. Not sorrow. Regret. Because even the gods feel it. Even they flinch when love dies like that. The sea had no right to take him. But it did. Because it always does. It takes those who love too deeply. Who believe too fiercely. Who carry hope like armor. Ceyx was a man who dared to sail with love as his compass. And the sea, cruel and immortal, crushed him for it. Now he lay there, salt on his lips, arms slack at his sides, heart silent. But her touch, light, trembling, was not. It moved the water. It woke the sky. Because grief that pure cannot go unheard. Because pain that sharp cannot go unanswered. Some say she screamed. Some say she kissed him. No one knows what she whispered. But something changed. The waves pulled back, not in retreat, but reverence. As if the ocean knew it had gone too far. As if Poseidon himself looked away. The wind stopped pretending. The world stood still. A god had taken a life. But it was love that brought it to shore. And it would not be the end. Not for them. Not yet. The sea could kill. But it couldn't erase. And somewhere, just beyond the tide, the myth began to shift. The room was silent, yet something moved. Not a sound. Not a breath. But something pressed against the air, heavy and unseen, like velvet soaked in grief. The candle had long since burned out, its smoke curling like fingers searching for meaning in the dark. Her eyes were closed. Her chest rose and fell. But her soul was no longer in that bed. Morpheus had arrived. He didn't knock. He never did. Doors meant nothing to him. Locks were just suggestions. Sleep was his passage. And in that breathless second between dreams and waking, he stepped through, his touch so soft the body never knew. He found her easily. The woman curled like paper, lost in pain too sharp for the daylight to hold. Halcyon. Her name flickered in the air above her like a dying star. The gods had sent him, not to comfort, but to show. To pull the truth from the shadows where mercy dared not go. He knelt beside her. Shadows draped his shoulders like armor, and his eyes were hollow but infinite, each blink 1,000 stories passed through silence. He lifted one hand, long fingers outstretched, and pressed it to her brow. The dream tore her open. No warning. No warmth. She stood on a shore she didn't remember walking to, in a dress soaked in moonlight. The sea ahead was black glass, stretching past the end of sense. Behind her, nothing. Just wind, just night, just the ache that never left. And then he stepped from the waves. Not Ceyx. Not really. But Morpheus, wearing him. He wore his shape like a funeral shroud. The smile. The walk. The voice that cracked like branches snapping under snow. It was perfect, too perfect, and that made it worse. Halcyon froze. Her breath caught. Her hands reached out, but didn't move. Her heart screamed. Her soul folded in. Halcyon, he said. That voice. That goddamned voice. And in that one word was everything she'd lost. Every morning he didn't wake beside her. Every kiss they never got to share. Every child they never named. Every prayer unanswered. I'm not him, the dream said. But he's gone. Her knees buckled. Sand didn't catch her. It consumed her. No, but Morpheus didn't blink. Didn't break. His task was not to lie. His task was to wound, with truth. His gift was not comfort. It was the blade beneath the veil. He drowned. She sobbed, but it came out silent. Her mouth open, but the sound had nowhere to go. The waves held it hostage. The sky swallowed it whole. Morpheus stepped closer. The illusion flickered. For a heartbeat, she saw the face beneath, the god beneath the mask. Eyes filled with centuries. A mouth carved from sleep. Shoulders draped in the night of 1,000 broken hearts. Dreams don't lie, he whispered. We show what the gods cannot say. Behind him, the sea wept light. Not water, light. Shapes moved within it. Black wings. Faces without names. The Oneiroi. Brothers of sleep. Sons of night. They circled like wolves made of fog, watching her collapse under the weight of knowing. They fed on moments like this. Not cruelly. Just, inevitably. From the shadows came another figure. Slower. Softer. Eyes closed. Breath silent. Hypnose. Even time bowed to him. His steps were silence perfected. Every moment around him slowed. A leaf paused mid-fall. The waves forgot to crash. Halcyon's pain stretched, suspended in a scream that never ended. Morpheus looked back at his father. Hypnose nodded. She had seen enough. With a sigh, Morpheus let the illusion fade. Ceyx's face melted into vapor. The sea shattered like glass around her feet. The sky peeled back. And still she wept. But now she knew. The gods had chosen to speak through pain. They always did. But this pain, they gave a face. A voice. A message wrapped in memory. The dream faded. Her body lay still in the bed, fists clenched in sheets wet with tears. Her mouth parted in a sob that never reached the air. The candle was still gone. The darkness still pressed. But something had changed. Sleep no longer sheltered her. Now it carried truth. And truth has no mercy. The sheets twisted around her ankles like vines, damp with sweat, heavy as chains. The air hung still, thicker than sleep, thicker than silence. Her mouth was open but empty. Her fingers clawed at nothing. The scream had not yet arrived. Something was coming. And it wore his face. The night shifted. No footfalls. No creak. Just a presence, immediate and absolute, like waking into a nightmare that refuses to blink. There he stood. Ceyx. As if death had forgotten to take the warmth from his eyes. As if breath still stirred his chest. As if the sea had been a lie. But it wasn't him. Not really. It was the skin of memory, pulled tight around grief. Morpheus had stepped into his form like slipping into sorrow. Her breath caught. She didn't speak. Words were distant things, useless here. The space between them pulsed like a wound, raw and alive. His lips moved. Her world stopped. Halcyon, he said. No thunder could match the sound of her name leaving his lips. No blade could slice cleaner. It shattered her, piece by piece, breath by breath, a slow disintegration of everything she clung to. Hope twisted into something violent. She reached for him. And her hands passed through. Not air. Not shadow. Something colder. No, it escaped her, barely audible, a dying flame flickering in the wind. No, you're here. You're alive. The eyes looked back, soft but unreadable. Too perfect. Too calm. I am the dream, he said, and the words throbbed through her bones. But what I bring is not a lie. He raised a hand. The sea poured out behind him. Black. Infinite. A horizon torn open. It wasn't water. It was memory drowning itself. And in it, him. The real Ceyx. Pale lips. Eyes swallowed by salt. Hair tangled like seaweed around a lifeless brow. The waves cradled his body like a cruel lullaby. Her knees gave way. The sand was suddenly beneath her feet, though her bed had not let her go. Her breath steamed in the dark. She was inside the vision now. No waking. No escaping. Only the truth, burning in the quiet. I called for you, Ceyx said, the dream Ceyx, standing tall while the true one floated behind him. But the wind stole my voice. The sea took everything. She shook her head. Violently. childishly. Her fists pounding against nothing. Against God. Against fate. No, she begged. Come back. Come back to me. I can't. The words were soft. Final. Her world collapsed in on itself. The stars vanished. The sand turned to ash beneath her feet. She was alone with him, and she would lose him again. She moved toward him. The closer she stepped, the more his form faltered. Not melting, unmaking. His edges dissolved like sleep itself, like the second before waking when the dream slips through your fingers. And still she walked. Into the nothing. Into him. Through him. Cold. So cold. She felt it seep into her skin, the temperature of truth. It wasn't just knowledge, it was feeling. The wet weight of his death in her arms. The silence he'd left behind. The eternity she would now spend talking to an absence. The wind howled. No, not wind. Wings. The Onero circled, silent shadows against a darker sky. They carried nightmares in their blood, memories in their feathers. Watching. Feeding. Waiting. Morpheus stood at their center, the illusion of Ceyx unraveling at the seams. She turned to him. Why show me this? His face was unreadable. Not cruel. Not kind. Just exact. Because lies rot the soul, he said. And you still sleep. She shook her head. I'll never wake again. He stepped forward. The world peeled away around him. The sea vanished. The sand melted. The wind died. The sky crumbled. There was only a bed. A woman. A god. And a ghost. Halcyon's eyes flew open. Her scream, silent in the dream, finally tore from her throat, a sound that cracked through the walls, that bled through stone. Her hands reached for a body that wasn't there. Gone. Gone. The bed was cold beside her. Her fingers found the place his chest should have risen. Still. Tears came in silence. No sobs. No movement. Just the slow overflow of something shattered too completely to make noise. And still the scent of salt lingered. Still the memory pressed into the walls. Still her body remembered the dream with more clarity than it had ever remembered waking life. He had come. He had said goodbye. And now all she could do was remember. The sea didn't roar that morning. It whispered. A breath through the air, salt on her tongue, the sky too still for comfort. Halcyon stood at the edge of the rocks, barefoot, wind tugging her gown like fingers begging her to stop. She didn't blink. She didn't breathe. Her eyes stared into the gray horizon, into the place where love had drowned. The waves did not greet her. They grieved. Below, the body drifted in like an offering. Not a miracle. A message. The gulls didn't cry. They circled in silence above the form that the tide had carried home, limbs slack, skin kissed by death, sea foam tangled in his hair like a cruel crown. The gods had let him return, not as husband, not as king, but as wreckage. Her knees buckled before she knew they had moved. Stones bit into her skin. She did not feel them. All feeling had fled. Her heart didn't break, it froze, mid-beat, mid-thought, mid-scream. What came next wasn't human. It was sound torn from the soul. It was the end of language. Her hands shook as they reached for him, too slow, too late. They trembled above his face, afraid to touch, afraid to prove it real. She wanted to wake. To be wrong. To see his chest rise, to feel his fingers close around hers. But the stillness screamed louder than anything she'd ever known. His lips were blue. His eyes, closed. She pressed her forehead to his, rocking like a mother over a dying child, breathless and broken. "No," she whispered. Again. 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 A word worn down to dust. The tide lapped against her legs. Behind her, voices gathered. Distant. Muted. Hands reaching. She slapped them away. Growled like an animal. She would not be moved. This was her altar. Her grief. Her God. They had promised love was protected. That no storm could take him without justice. But here he was. And the sky did not split. No thunder. No wrath. Only quiet. Only surrender. The kind that kills slowly. She lay beside him. Not beside a man. Beside absence. And in that absence, her memory screamed. His laugh echoed in her head, sharp, sudden, so alive it crushed her. His kiss on her shoulder, the way he'd say her name when the world felt safe. She remembered it all. Every word he ever gave her had turned to ash in her throat. And still she clung to his body. Salt stung her eyes. Not from the sea. She wanted to tear the world apart. Wanted the gods to bleed. Wanted her heart to stop beating, because each pulse was a betrayal, each breath without him an abomination. But time doesn't pity grief. It pulls. Even when you scream. Even when you bleed. They came again. This time, stronger. Hands gripped her arms, pulled her back from the water. Her nails scraped the stone. Her cries cracked the air. Still, they took him from her. Carried him like a prize won by death. She watched. Powerless. Small. Alone. That night, she sat in silence, wrapped in the clothing he once touched, smelling of ocean and rot and memory. The stars looked down, cold and cruel and endless. She did not sleep. Could not. Her eyes were wide, as if closing them would mean forgetting his face. She spoke to the dark, but the dark did not answer. "I loved you." The words were blood on her tongue. The wind shifted. She stood. And walked. No shoes. No cloak. No fear. She walked to the cliffs where they had kissed under storms, where he promised always and she believed it. She stood where sea met sky, where gods might still listen. Then she stepped off the edge. No scream. No hesitation. Only the fall. The rush of wind. The pull of gravity. The wild ache of release. And then, silence. But the sea did not devour her. It held her. A strange light shimmered beneath the waves. A shape moved. Another. Wings. Feathers. Not angels. Not birds. Something older. Something holy. From the darkness rose a ripple. And then, two. Two forms. Two shapes with beaks where mouths should be. With eyes that held too much sorrow for a single life. Halcyon and Ceyx, born again as kingfishers, cursed and blessed to fly together over the waters that once tore them apart. But she still remembered. She would always remember. Because grief does not vanish. It grows wings. The wind screamed louder than her thoughts. Halcyon stood on the cliff, barefoot, hair tangled like seaweed in a storm, eyes red from salt and sleep she would never know again. The waves below snarled and clawed at the rocks, white foam churning like teeth. The sky, dull and ash-colored, seemed to hold its breath. Her hands were empty now. They had once clutched love. Now they trembled. She didn't pray. Not this time. The gods had already answered, and they had answered with death. Her knees wobbled. Her dress clung to her legs, soaked in grief and sea water. Her mouth opened, but no words came. There was nothing left to say. No one left to hear. The wind wrapped around her body like a shroud, urging her forward. One step. One more. The edge crumbled slightly under her weight. The sea below waited, not patiently, not kindly, but hungrily. She leaned into it, hair flaring behind her like a torn banner. She could feel her heartbeat in her throat, in her fingertips, in her ears. A slow, heavy drum, counting down. She saw his face. Ceyx. Not in the waves. In her mind. He was smiling. The soft smile he saved for her. The one that meant forever. The one that was gone. Gone. Her toes curled over the edge. Then she jumped. And the world shattered. Air ripped from her lungs. Her body arched. She fell, not like a feather, but like a stone. Hard. Fast. Final. The ocean came for her, roaring, endless, wide enough to swallow all memory. But something caught her. Not water. Not wind. Something between. The fall stopped, not with a crash, not with pain, but with stillness. Her body floated in the air. Not falling. Not rising. Held. She blinked. There was no cliff above her. No sea below. Only colorless light, cold, strange, thick like mist pressed against her skin. Her chest heaved, but the breath didn't hurt. The pain was there, but it had changed. Not softer. Just shifted. A sound brushed her ears. Wings. Feathers moving through silence. She turned her head. Ceyx. Not his body. Not the drowned ruin that had come home to her. But him. Alive in form. His shape, half man, half something else. His eyes were the same. Those eyes. That depth. That sadness. That love. She did not speak. She could not. Her mouth trembled, and instead, a gasp slipped through, sharp, trembling, disbelieving. His hand reached for hers. Not quite human. Not quite ghost. But his. She took it. And the world shifted again. Their bodies changed. Not torn apart. Melded into something other. Feathers burst from skin. Fingers curved into wings. Their legs pulled together, thinned, lengthened, became sleek and strong. Their hearts beat faster, not out of fear, but flight. She opened her mouth, but no scream came. A song. A cry. A sound ancient and aching. The gods had seen her leap. And they had intervened. Not with pity. Not with punishment. But with permanence. She would not be mortal. She would not grieve as a woman. She would live as something beyond flesh. Beyond time. A kingfisher. Her wings beat once, twice, and she rose from the place where she should have broken. The sky, once gray, opened. A shaft of light split through the clouds, and wind carried her upward, weightless, fierce, unreal. Beside her, Ceyx flew. Not a dream. Not a trick. Not a lie. Her heart thudded in her chest, still burning with all it had lost. But now it flew with something else too. Love. The kind that refused to end. She soared above the cliffs where she had wanted to die. Above the body she once held. The waves, still angry, reached for her shadow. But they could not touch her. Not anymore. The pain had changed its face. It had grown wings. She circled the spot where he had drowned. Ceyx flew beside her, silent. Her body ached with memory, but now her sorrow was song. A morning bird's cry. Sharp. Sweet. Unending. And below, the sea calmed for the first time in days. As if even it had been watching. The sea went silent. Not calm, silent. As if every wave, every breeze, every screaming gull had been struck mute by something bigger than fear. The air didn't move. The clouds hung heavy, bloated with storm, but not a drop fell. It was the kind of silence that presses against the bones, that makes the blood slow down. The kind that signals something is watching. Far above, Zeus looked down. He had seen the woman fall. Seen the love twist itself into death, the devotion leap without hesitation. No bargaining. No hesitation. Just one soul hurling itself after another. The gods had watched mortals beg, curse, rage. But this was different. There was no begging. Only a silence more powerful than prayer. His knuckles tightened on the edge of his throne. The storm he had brewed for the ship still rumbled behind his ribs. But now, something inside him shifted. She had jumped. And not even the sea had wanted to take her. Below, two birds cut through the sky, wings slicing through the gray, feathers dark as grief, eyes blazing with memory. They circled one another, not touching, not landing. Bound by wind, by sorrow, by something older than time. Halcyon and Ceyx. No longer flesh. No longer mortal. But not yet free. They flew in mourning. Their cries clawed at the clouds, sharp, aching, relentless. Sounds that twisted the heart. Not music. Not words. Just raw, broken need, flung into the sky like blood on marble. And Zeus could not ignore it. His thunder quieted. His hand, raised to strike again, dropped to his side. He had punished love before. Had torn it apart for pride, for rules, for balance. But this love refused to die. Even in death, it had wings. It flew. It wept. It begged for nothing, and still it sang. He whispered a word. It was not mercy. It was awe. And the sky answered. The wind changed first, turning gentle, soft, like breath against the neck. The waves beneath the birds slowed, rolled instead of crashing. The gray broke, just slightly, and gold touched the clouds like a finger sliding down a scar. The kingfisher and her mate dipped low over the sea. Still crying. Still hurting. But the pain wasn't hollow anymore. Something had shifted. Something they couldn't name. She felt it in her chest, Halcyon. Still Halcyon, even now. Her wings beat harder. She wasn't sure why. The air tasted different. Her feathers prickled. There was a weight in her body that lifted, not physically, not completely, but just enough to breathe again. Ceyx cried out once, a sharp echo beside her. He felt it too. Then the change came. Not in a flash. Not in thunder. But in stillness. Their wings glowed, barely, but undeniably. Like starlight seeping into flesh. Their feathers brightened, gleaming with color that hadn't been there before. Blue. Royal. Sacred. Their eyes, those same human eyes, now held something eternal. Their forms held. But their suffering began to heal. The sky pulsed with warmth. A divine warmth. Not fire. Not storm. Just a pause in the world's cruelty. The gods had given them more than life. They had given them stillness. For 7 days, each winter solstice, Zeus would calm the seas. He would still the winds. He would halt his hand. Not out of guilt. Not out of pity. but out of respect for the kind of love that threw itself into death and still found wings. These were Halcyon days. Not peaceful because the world grew kind. Peaceful because even wrath stopped to listen. The birds flew lower now, wings whispering over the sea's surface. Skimming it. Tasting the silence they had earned. The water did not fight them. It cradled them. It bowed beneath them like glass under a breath. Ceyx brushed his wing against hers. Not a touch of passion. Not yet. But presence. Solidarity. They had lost everything. But they had not lost each other. She tilted her head. Her eyes searched the horizon. The sea had taken him once. She had tried to give herself to it in return. Now they glided above it like gods in miniature, light and shadow on liquid steel. Far below, fish paused. Even the tides moved slower. Halcyon flew higher. She wasn't afraid now. Her body remembered the fall. The helpless plummet. But now, she could soar. Every beat of her wings was defiance. Every cry was a reminder. They could not be broken. They could only be changed. Behind her, the wind hushed. Zeus watched, still silent, still watching. The storm within him stayed caged. His hand never lifted again. Not when they flew. Not during the days the sea grew calm. Not while love still had wings. A flash of blue cut through the fog like a wound opening in the sky. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't wind. It was quieter, too quiet. A flicker of movement too fast for the eye to follow, too strange to ignore. The kind of thing that leaves silence in its wake. A cold breath down the spine, that makes you stop walking mid-step, and stare at nothing, waiting for something to appear that never does. But it was there. The kingfisher. Its wings caught the dying light, flaring like blades dipped in fire and frost. It flew low, skimming the water, kissing it, never disturbing the surface. As if the ocean bowed to it. As if the waves knew better than to touch something that had once risen from the dead. It shouldn't have been so beautiful. It shouldn't have looked like freedom. But it did. And that's what made it hurt. People see it, this small, sharp-billed bird, and they smile. They point. They speak of calm. Of peace. Of quiet days without storms. They speak of Halcyon, as if it means stillness, as if it's just about the sea sleeping for a week. As if the word doesn't bleed. They forget. Or maybe they never knew. They don't see the bones beneath the feathers. They don't hear the scream hidden in the song. They don't feel the ache in the way its wings push against gravity, like it's always trying to lift something heavier than itself. Not just its body. Something older. Something broken and still beating. The kingfisher carries more than color. It carries myth. Memory. Grief frozen in flight. It carries her. Alcyone. A name swallowed by time, yet etched into every feather. She is the sky-colored blur above the waves. She is the pause in the wind before it shifts. She is the hush that falls when the sea forgets how to be violent. Not because it's healed, but because it's mourning. The kingfisher's cry is not sweet. It's sharp. Piercing. Like a mother calling out for someone who will never come home. Like a heartbeat breaking apart mid-thump. It echoes off stone, over rivers, across oceans, and yet no one answers. Because it's not a song. It's a warning. Even now, some say she builds her nest on water. Not beside it. Not near it. On it. A floating nest, delicate and defiant. Daring the sea to rise. Daring the wind to try. Every egg laid in that cradle is a whispered threat, you took once. Never again. And Zeus, in his storm-thick silence, honors it. For 7 days, the world holds its breath. Not for the bird. For what she reminds it of. For what she forces it to remember. A love that defied gods, gravity, death. A grief so loud, it silenced Olympus. A leap from the cliffs that tore through the clouds and stitched itself into the skin of the earth. A scream that turned into wings. The bird does not forget. Even now, when she flies, her shadow looks wrong. Too long. Too human. The outline flickers, just for a second. 2 wings, then arms. A blur, then a woman. If you blink, you'll miss it. If you stare too long, it stares back. Some say if you see a kingfisher before a storm, the storm will pass. Some say that's because she wills it. Not through magic. Through memory. Because when she lost him, the sky shattered. And when the gods tried to look away, she forced them to see. The kingfisher is not a bird. She is grief in motion. She is love that refused to rot. She is the shape of pain after it learns to fly. And when she perches, silent, alone, eyes fixed on the sea, there is nothing gentle in her stillness. It's not calm. It's warning. She watches the waves the way a mother watches a sleeping child. Not for peace. For signs of waking violence. Because the sea does not forget either. It rolls, it pulls, it aches. It remembers her scream. It remembers his body. It remembers the moment it was forced to give back what it had taken. So it waits. And the bird waits. And between them hangs a thread, invisible, unbreakable, stretched tight across centuries. A line pulled taut by love and death and goddamn defiance. No one tells that part. They talk of Halcyon days like they're pretty things. Soft things. Days with warm light and slow waves. But they are wrong. They are the silence bought by pain. They are the peace forced from wrath. They are the price the sea paid to hold her sorrow without swallowing her. So when the kingfisher flies, don't smile. Don't whisper about calm seas and poetic skies. Watch her wings. Watch the way they tremble at the tips. That's not just wind. That's memory. And memory never lands. It starts with stillness so unnatural it feels like the world has stopped breathing. Not quiet. Not peace. Stillness. The kind that wraps itself around your neck like silk and strangles slow. You feel it first in the wind, because there is none. Trees stand frozen, their branches aching for movement. The sea, once alive and snarling, flattens itself into a silver sheet. No wave. No ripple. Just a waiting thing, wide and watchful. You step outside and the air presses against your skin like it knows something you don't. Birds are gone. The sky hangs heavy, not with clouds, but with silence. You don't speak. No one does. Because this is not calm. This is the pause before something breaks. They called it Halcyon days. But nothing about it is gentle. Not really. Because long ago, when the world still trembled under the eyes of gods, they noticed it too. This strange hush that settled over the sea, exactly once each year. A time when the ocean ceased its rage, when even Poseidon held his breath. It was no coincidence. It was no weather pattern. It was promise. Broken things have power when they remember how they shattered. And Alcyone remembered. Her pain stitched itself into time. Into tide. Into the space between wind and wave. And for a brief sliver of the year, just days, the earth bowed to her grief. Zeus made it so. Not out of kindness. Out of fear. The gods are not kind. But they are terrified of what grief can become when it refuses to fade. So he gave her that space. That week. Those 7 days of stolen stillness, when her nest floated untouched on the sea. When the storms curled away. When the sky pressed its lips shut and waited. Not for the birth of chicks, but for the fury beneath feathers to pass without rising. It became myth. It became lore. And now, every year, long after names have faded and statues have cracked, the sea still remembers. But it's a fragile piece. A haunted one. Because calm this perfect always comes at a cost. The waves that do not rise are holding back. The winds that do not howl are listening. The sky that does not cry is clenching its fists behind the clouds. Nature does not rest. It crouches. You can feel it if you stand on the shore long enough. Your heartbeat slows, not from comfort, but from something more primal. Like your blood is trying to match the rhythm of the waiting world. Like your body understands this pause is unnatural, dangerous. You see the kingfisher flash across the horizon. You know the storm is coming. But it waits. Because she is nesting. Because those eggs, fragile, trembling, floating on woven reeds and stolen threads, mean more than any thunderhead. They are proof that love survived being shattered. Proof that the sea, for all its swallowing hunger, failed to kill her. And the sea hates to fail. So it waits. It pulls back. Not in surrender. In respect. Or maybe fear. Because there is something holy in this moment. Something that does not come from temples or prayers or names carved in stone. It comes from silence. From the way the world pauses without command. From the way it aches without explanation. This calm does not ask for belief. It demands stillness. It takes your breath and holds it. It buries the noise inside your chest. It makes you look up and wonder what it cost to win these days. Who bled for them? Who still does? And then, somewhere far off, a wave cracks against stone. Just one. Just loud enough to remind you this won't last. That the sea is patient, not peaceful. That storms do not vanish. They sleep. And in their sleep, they dream of wings too bold, too bright, too defiant to drown. You feel the air change. Slightly. A shift so soft, it could be missed by anyone not paying attention. But it's there. A single breath of wind, cutting through the stillness like a warning shot. She is almost done. The nesting ends soon. And when it does, the sky will open its throat again. The ocean will remember its rage. The storm will come. But not yet. Not while she watches. A hush falls over the forest, unnatural and thick, as if the trees themselves are holding their breath. The air is heavy, saturated with anticipation, and the leaves tremble without wind. In this suspended moment, Daphne runs, her heart pounding, her breath ragged. Behind her, Apollo's footsteps thunder, relentless and closing in. She doesn't look back. She doesn't need to. The fear is a living thing, coiling around her, urging her forward. She cries out, not to the god pursuing her, but to the earth, to the sky, to her father, the river god Peneus. Her plea is raw, desperate, to be saved, to be transformed, to be anything but what she is, a woman about to be caught. And the world listens. Her limbs stiffen, her skin roughens, and her hair turns to leaves. Roots anchor her to the ground, and branches stretch skyward. She becomes a laurel tree, silent and still, her essence preserved but her freedom forever compromised. Elsewhere, Arashan sits at her loom, fingers deftly weaving tales into tapestry. Her work is flawless, each thread a testament to her skill. She weaves stories of gods and mortals, of triumphs and transgressions, unflinching in her portrayal. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and crafts, watches with a mix of admiration and fury. The mortal's talent is undeniable, but her audacity is unforgivable. A challenge is issued, a contest of skill. Arachne accepts, and her tapestry surpasses even the goddess's expectations. But it's not just the craftsmanship, it's the content, the unvarnished truth about the gods' misdeeds. Athena's pride shatters. In a rage, she destroys the tapestry and strikes Arachne down. But as the mortal hangs herself in despair, Athena feels a pang of remorse. She transforms Arachne into a spider, allowing her to weave forever, a silent acknowledgement of her unparalleled skill. In a humble cottage, Baucis and Philemon welcome two weary travelers, unaware that they are Zeus and Hermes in disguise. Their hospitality is genuine, their kindness untainted by expectation. As the gods reveal their true identities, they offer the couple a reward. Baucis and Philemon ask only to serve as priests in the gods' temple and to die together. Their wish is granted. When their time comes, they are transformed into intertwined trees, standing side by side for eternity, a testament to love and devotion. In the underworld, Persephone listens to Orpheus's mournful melody, each note a plea for his lost love, Eurydice. The music weaves through the shadows, touching even Hades's cold heart. Moved by the depth of Orpheus's sorrow, Persephone persuades Hades to allow Eurydice to return to the living world, with one condition: Orpheus must not look back until they reach the surface. Hope flickers, but doubt creeps in. Just before the threshold, Orpheus turns, and Eurydice is lost once more. Yet, for a moment, mercy had prevailed, and love had almost triumphed over death. These stories, woven into the fabric of myth, reveal the gods' capacity for compassion, for granting reprieve, for transforming punishment into a form of salvation. They are reminders that even in the face of divine wrath, mercy can emerge, unexpected and profound. Each metamorphosis, each act of grace, leaves an indelible mark: the tree, a spider, a pair of intertwined trunks, symbols of the complex dance between mortals and the divine. A hush falls over the sea, unnatural and absolute. The waves, once restless, now lie still, as if the ocean itself holds its breath. The sky, devoid of clouds, stretches endlessly, a canvas waiting for the brushstrokes of fate. In this eerie calm, a solitary figure stands at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed, arms outstretched, as if embracing the void. The world seems to pause, suspended in a moment that teeters between reality and dream. In the realm of dreams, the boundaries between the mortal and the divine blur. Visions come unbidden, carrying messages from the gods, prophecies that shape destinies. The ancient Greeks believed in the power of dreams, seeing them as a conduit for divine communication. Oneros, the personification of dreams, would visit sleepers, delivering omens and guidance. These dreams were not mere figments of imagination, but were considered significant, often foretelling events that would unfold in the waking world. In the stillness of the night, a warrior dreams of a battlefield drenched in blood, his own lifeless body among the fallen. He awakens with a start, the image seared into his mind. Such dreams are not to be ignored. They are warnings, glimpses into a future that may yet be altered. The gods speak in riddles and symbols, their message is wrapped in the enigma of dreams. To interpret these visions is to grasp the threads of fate and perhaps, to change them. Airless, the keeper of the winds, holds dominion over the air's invisible forces. From his floating island of Aeolia, he commands the four winds, Boreas, Zephyrus, Eurus, and Notus, releasing them at the behest of the gods. His power is immense, capable of stirring tempests, or granting calm seas. When Odysseus sought his aid, Aeolus provided a bag containing all the winds, ensuring a safe voyage. Yet, the capricious nature of the gods meant that such gifts could be both a blessing and a curse. Poseidon, god of the sea, wields his trident to command the oceans, his moods reflected in the waves' fury or tranquility. He is a deity of immense power, his wrath feared by sailors and his favor sought by those who traverse his domain. The sea, under his rule, becomes a living entity, capable of both nurturing and destroying. When angered, Poseidon unleashes storms that can obliterate entire fleets, his vengeance as vast as the ocean itself. The interplay between Aeolus and Poseidon illustrates the delicate balance of nature's forces in Greek mythology. Wind and sea, though distinct, are intertwined, their harmony essential for the world's equilibrium. The gods, in their interactions, reflect this interdependence, their actions influencing the mortal realm in profound ways. A favor from Aeolus might be nullified by Poseidon's ire, and vice versa. Mortals caught in this divine interplay must navigate the whims of these powerful beings, their fates often hanging in the balance. Dreams and natural forces serve as mediums through which the gods communicate their will. A dream may foretell a storm, a tempest may signify divine displeasure. The ancients understood these signs, interpreting them to guide their actions. Ignoring such omens could lead to disaster, while heeding them might avert catastrophe. In this way, dreams and the elements become tools of prophecy, their messages woven into the fabric of existence. In the silence that follows a storm, the air is thick with anticipation. The sea, momentarily calm, conceals the turmoil beneath. A sailor, having survived the tempest, dreams of a serene voyage, only to awaken to darkening skies. The line between dream and reality blurs, each influencing the other. In Greek mythology, this interplay underscores the belief that the divine is ever present, its influence felt in both the subconscious and the natural world. The power of dreams and the forces of nature are not merely passive elements in these myths. They are active participants in the unfolding of destiny. They serve as reminders of the gods' omnipresence and the importance of remaining attuned to their signs. In the stillness of a dream or the fury of a storm, the divine speaks, guiding mortals through the complexities of life. To listen is to acknowledge the gods' role in shaping the world, to ignore is to invite their wrath. As the sea resumes its rhythm and the winds pick up once more, the moment of eerie calm passes. Yet, the memory of that stillness lingers, a testament to the gods' power and the ever-present potential for change. In the realm of Greek mythology, dreams and natural forces are not mere phenomena. They are the language of the divine, ever whispering, ever guiding. A hush falls over the sea, unnatural and absolute. The waves, once restless, now lie still, as if the ocean itself holds its breath. The sky, devoid of clouds, stretches endlessly, a canvas waiting for the brushstrokes of fate. In this eerie calm, a solitary figure stands at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed, arms outstretched, as if embracing the void. The world seems to pause, suspended in a moment that teeters between reality and dream. Suddenly, a gust of wind disrupts the stillness, carrying with it the scent of salt and sorrow. The figure opens her eyes, revealing a gaze filled with longing and despair. She takes a step forward, then another, until the ground beneath her disappears. Time slows as she descends, the wind rushing past her ears, a cacophony of memories and regrets. As she plunges into the depths, the water envelops her, cold and unyielding. Her body sinks, pulled by the weight of grief and the finality of her decision. But just as darkness threatens to consume her, a light pierces through the gloom. A gentle warmth surrounds her, lifting her from the abyss. She feels her form changing, bones reshaping, skin transforming. Feathers sprout, wings unfurl, and she rises, reborn. Above the waves, another figure emerges, mirroring her transformation. Their eyes meet, and in that instant, recognition dawns. They soar together, two souls reunited, their love transcending the boundaries of life and death. The sky, once a harbinger of despair, now bears witness to their eternal bond. In the days that follow, the sea remains calm, honoring their union. The world, touched by their story, remembers this period as a time of peace and serenity. And so, the legend of the Halcyon days is born, a testament to love's enduring power and the mercy of the divine. A hush falls over the sea, unnatural and absolute. The waves, once restless, now lie still, as if the ocean itself holds its breath. The sky, devoid of clouds, stretches endlessly, a canvas waiting for the brushstrokes of fate. In this eerie calm, a solitary figure stands at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed, arms outstretched, as if embracing the void. The world seems to pause, suspended in a moment that teeters between reality and dream. Suddenly, a gust of wind disrupts the stillness, carrying with it the scent of salt and sorrow. The figure opens her eyes, revealing a gaze filled with longing and despair. She takes a step forward, then another, until the ground beneath her disappears. Time slows as she descends, the wind rushing past her ears, a cacophony of memories and regrets. As she plunges into the depths, the water envelops her, cold and unyielding. Her body sinks, pulled by the weight of grief and the finality of her decision. But just as darkness threatens to consume her, a light pierces through the gloom. A gentle warmth surrounds her, lifting her from the abyss. She feels her form changing, bones reshaping, skin transforming. Feathers sprout, wings unfurl, and she rises, reborn. Above the waves, another figure emerges, mirroring her transformation. Their eyes meet, and in that instant, recognition dawns. They soar together, two souls reunited, their love transcending the boundaries of life and death. The sky, once a harbinger of despair, now bears witness to their eternal bond. In the days that follow, the sea remains calm, honoring their union. The world, touched by their story, remembers this period as a time of peace and serenity. And so, the legend of the Halcyon days is born, a testament to love's enduring power and the mercy of the divine. A hush falls over the sea, unnatural and absolute. The waves, once restless, now lie still, as if the ocean itself holds its breath. The sky, devoid of clouds, stretches endlessly, a canvas waiting for the brushstrokes of fate. In this eerie calm, a solitary figure stands at the edge of a cliff, eyes closed, arms outstretched, as if embracing the void. The world seems to pause, suspended in a moment that teeters between reality and dream. Suddenly, a gust of wind disrupts the stillness, carrying with it the scent of salt and sorrow. The figure opens her eyes, revealing a gaze filled with longing and despair. She takes a step forward, then another, until the ground beneath her disappears. Time slows as she descends, the wind rushing past her ears, a cacophony of memories and regrets. As she plunges into the depths, the water envelops her, cold and unyielding. Her body sinks, pulled by the weight of grief and the finality of her decision. But just as darkness threatens to consume her, a light pierces through the gloom. A gentle warmth surrounds her, lifting her from the abyss. She feels her form changing, bones reshaping, skin transforming. Feathers sprout, wings unfurl, and she rises, reborn. Above the waves, another figure emerges, mirroring her transformation. Their eyes meet, and in that instant, recognition dawns. They soar together, two souls reunited, their love transcending the boundaries of life and death. The sky, once a harbinger of despair, now bears witness to their eternal bond. In the days that follow, the sea remains calm, honoring their union. The world, touched by their story, remembers this period as a time of peace and serenity. And so, the legend of the Halcyon days is born, a testament to love's enduring power and the mercy of the divine. A hush falls over the cathedral, the kind that presses against your chest and steals the breath from your lungs. Candles flicker in the dim light, casting shadows that dance across the stone walls like specters of forgotten tales. In the heart of this sacred space, a fresco emerges from the gloom, a vivid portrayal of Ceyx and Alcyone, their forms entwined in an eternal embrace. The artist's brush has captured not just their likeness, but their very souls, suspended in a moment of divine transformation. The air is thick with incense, a scent that clings to the skin and seeps into the soul. It mingles with the whispers of prayers, murmured by monks who tread softly across the cold stone floor. Their voices rise and fall like the tide, a rhythmic chant that echoes through the nave and into the heavens. Each word is a plea, a supplication for mercy, for understanding, for love that transcends the mortal coil. Outside, the world is cloaked in darkness, the stars obscured by heavy clouds that threaten to unleash a storm. But within these walls, there is light, a glow that emanates not from the candles but from the fresco itself. It pulses with life, with emotion, with a story that has been told and retold through the ages. The tale of Ceyx and Alcyone, once mere mortals, now immortalized in art and legend. Their story is one of love and loss, of transformation and transcendence. Ceyx, lost at sea, his ship swallowed by the unforgiving waves. Halcyon, left behind, her heart shattered by grief. Yet, in their sorrow, they found solace, not in death, but in metamorphosis. The gods, moved by their unwavering devotion, granted them new forms, allowing their love to endure beyond the confines of human existence. In the medieval imagination, their tale took on new dimensions. The transformation of Ceyx and Alcyone became a symbol of divine mercy, a testament to the power of love to conquer even death. Their story was woven into the fabric of Christian symbolism, their metamorphosis seen as a metaphor for the soul's journey toward salvation. The fresco captures this interpretation, depicting the couple not as mere birds, but as celestial beings, their wings outstretched as they ascend toward the heavens. The Renaissance brought a renewed interest in classical mythology, and with it, a reimagining of Ceyx and Alcyone's story. Humanist scholars, driven by a desire to reconcile ancient wisdom with contemporary thought, found in their tale a rich tapestry of themes: love, loss, transformation, and the enduring human spirit. Artists and writers alike drew inspiration from their myth, infusing their works with the emotional depth and complexity that characterized the era. In the hands of Renaissance painters, the story of Ceyx and Alcyone was brought to life with unparalleled vibrancy. Their canvases depicted the couple's final embrace, the moment of transformation, and the serenity that followed. Each brushstroke conveyed the intensity of their emotions, the agony of separation, and the ecstasy of reunion. The use of light and shadow, of color and form, served to heighten the drama, drawing the viewer into the narrative and evoking a visceral response. Literary figures of the time, too, found resonance in the myth. Poets penned verses that echoed the themes of love and metamorphosis, their words imbued with the same passion and poignancy that defined the original tale. Playwrights wove the story into their dramas, using it as a lens through which to explore the complexities of human emotion and the transformative power of love. The myth of Ceyx and Alcyone became a mirror, reflecting the hopes and fears, the joys and sorrows of an age in flux. As the Renaissance gave way to the modern era, the story of Ceyx and Alcyone continued to captivate the imagination. Their tale, timeless in its themes and universal in its appeal, transcended cultural and temporal boundaries. It served as a reminder of the enduring power of love, of the possibility of transformation, and of the human capacity for resilience in the face of adversity. Their legacy, immortalized in art and literature, endures, a testament to the profound impact of myth on the human psyche. In the quiet of the cathedral, the fresco remains, a silent witness to the passage of time, a beacon of hope and inspiration. Its colors may fade, its edges may blur, but the story it tells remains as vivid and compelling as ever. The tale of Ceyx and Alcyone, of love that defies death and transformation that transcends the mortal realm, continues to resonate, to move, to inspire. It is a story that speaks to the heart, that stirs the soul, that reminds us of the beauty and fragility of the human experience. The sea was still. Not calm, still. As if the gods themselves held their breath. No wind stirred. No wave dared rise. A silence so vast it pressed against the skin, heavy and cold. The sky, a pale bruise of dawn, hung above the water like a secret not yet spoken. And there, on the shore, a woman stood. Her eyes fixed on the horizon, her hands trembling at her sides. She waited. For what, she did not know. Only that something was coming. Something that would change everything. In the distance, a shape emerged. A boat, adrift. Its sails torn, its hull battered. As it drew closer, the woman's breath caught in her throat. She recognized it. It was his. The boat he had taken when he left her. The boat that was supposed to bring him back. But now, it was empty. Except for the body. Pale, lifeless, cradled by the sea. Her knees buckled. She fell to the sand, a scream tearing from her lips. The sky wept with her, rain falling in sheets, the sea churning in sorrow. And then, as if moved by her grief, the gods took pity. They transformed her. Gave her wings. Set her free. So she could be with him. Forever. The myth of Ceyx and Alcyone has been depicted in various forms of art throughout history. For instance, in the 1760s, artist Richard Wilson created a painting illustrating the tragic moment when Halcyon discovers the lifeless body of her husband, Ceyx, brought ashore by the sea. This artwork captures the profound grief and transformation central to their story. In ancient Greek religion, the myth of Halcyon and Ceyx was associated with the Halcyon days, a period of calm seas during winter. It was believed that during this time, the sea remained tranquil to allow Halcyon, transformed into a kingfisher, to lay her eggs safely. This period was marked by rituals and seasonal beliefs that honored the harmony between nature and the divine. The tale of Halcyon and Ceyx, rich in emotion and transformation, continues to resonate through art and religious practices, symbolizing love, loss, and the enduring connection between humans and the divine. The sea was a mirror of obsidian, stretched taut beneath a sky bruised with the last light of day. No wind stirred. No gull cried. The silence was not peace, it was a breath held too long. Then, a single ripple broke the surface, spreading like a shiver through the stillness. From the depths, a form emerged, neither fish nor fowl, but something in between. A kingfisher, its feathers glistening with the hues of sorrow, hovered above the water. It was Halcyon, once a queen, now a bird, searching for a love lost to the tempest. In ancient art, their story was etched into clay and stone. On urns and vases, the tragedy unfolded, Ceyx, setting sail against omens, Halcyon, praying to gods who would not listen, the storm, merciless and deafening, the transformation, a mercy too late. Each stroke of the artist's hand captured the agony of love torn asunder. The figures were frozen in time, yet their pain was palpable, seeping through the centuries. The myth did not remain confined to pottery and sculpture. It seeped into the rituals of the Greeks, becoming a part of their seasonal beliefs. During the Halcyon days, a period of calm in the midst of winter, the sea would still, and the skies would clear. It was said that Halcyon, in her bird form, nested during this time, and her father, Aeolus, god of the winds, calmed the storms to protect her. The people observed this period with reverence, acknowledging the fragile peace granted by the gods. They understood that tranquility was a gift, born from sorrow and sacrifice. The rituals were intimate, often conducted by women, who gathered to honor the memory of Halcyon's devotion. They would craft small offerings, whisper prayers, and share stories of love and loss. The ceremonies were not grand, but they were profound, rooted in the shared understanding of grief and the hope for serenity. Through these acts, the myth lived on, not just as a tale of transformation, but as a testament to enduring love. As the Halcyon days passed, the sea would stir once more, and the cycle of storms would resume. But for a brief moment, there was calm, a stillness born from the depths of despair, a reminder that even in the darkest times, love could bring light. The story of Ceyx and Alcyone was not just a myth, it was a mirror, reflecting the human experience of love, loss, and the longing for peace. The sea was still. Not calm, still. As if the world had forgotten to breathe. No wind stirred the surface. No gull cried. The sky held its breath above the water, and the water reflected it perfectly, like a mirror too afraid to ripple. It was the kind of silence that presses against your chest, that makes your heart beat louder, just to remind you you're alive. Somewhere, far below, something ancient stirred. They called it the Halcyon days. Not because of peace, but because of the myth. Because once, long ago, a woman named Halcyon had thrown herself into the sea, her grief so heavy it sank her soul. And the gods, perhaps moved by pity, or perhaps by guilt, transformed her into a bird, a kingfisher. And for 7 days before and after the winter solstice, her father Airless calmed the winds, so she could nest upon the sea. A gift. A mercy. A reminder. But the sea does not forget. And neither do we. The phrase, Halcyon days, has drifted far from its origin, now used to describe times of peace and happiness. Yet beneath its serene surface lies a story of loss, transformation, and the fragile balance between despair and hope. In Greek mythology, transformation often serves as both punishment and redemption. Cyproites, a Cretan hunter, was transformed into a woman by Artemis for seeing her bathing. This change was not just physical, but symbolic, reflecting themes of identity and the consequences of transgression. These myths teach us that transformation is not always a choice, but it is always a journey. A journey through pain, through loss, through the unknown. And sometimes, through that journey, we find redemption. We find a new self, forged in the crucible of suffering. The Halcyon days, then, are not just a time of calm weather. They are a symbol of the peace that follows the storm, the light that follows the darkness. They remind us that even in our deepest despair, there is hope for transformation. For redemption. For a new beginning. So when the sea is still, and the sky holds its breath, remember Halcyon. Remember the Halcyon days. And know that even in the silence, there is a story waiting to be told. The sea was a mirror of glass, too still, too silent. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and whispers warnings you can't quite hear. Halcyon stood on the shore, her eyes fixed on the horizon, where the sky met the water in a seamless blur. She had waited for days, her heart a pendulum swinging between hope and dread. Then, a speck appeared in the distance, growing larger with each passing moment. It was a body, lifeless, drifting towards her. As it came closer, recognition struck her like lightning, Ceyx. Her knees buckled, and a scream tore from her throat, raw and unending. In that moment, the gods, moved by her anguish, transformed them both into Halcyon birds, forever bound to the sea that had taken so much from them. Centuries later, their story etched itself into the fabric of human expression. The term, Halcyon days, emerged, denoting periods of peace and tranquility, a stark contrast to the storm that had claimed Ceyx. It became a metaphor for times past, golden and untouchable, often idealized in memory. The phrase carried with it the weight of their love, a love that defied death and transformed into legend. In art, their tale found new life. Painters captured the moment of transformation, the anguish, the divine intervention. Each brushstroke a testament to the enduring power of their love. In literature, poets and playwrights reimagined their story, weaving it into new narratives, each time breathing fresh emotion into the ancient myth. The Renaissance, with its emphasis on humanism, saw a resurgence of interest in such tales, viewing them as reflections of human experience and emotion. Even in modern times, their story resonates. The kingfisher, their avian form, symbolizes peace and prosperity. Its presence is a reminder of the calm after the storm, of love's ability to endure and transform. The myth of Ceyx and Alcyone serves as a poignant reminder of the depths of human emotion, the pain of loss, and the hope of transformation. It is a story that continues to be told, not just in words, but in the quiet moments of reflection, in the stillness of calm seas, and in the enduring belief in love's power to transcend even death.